Hello and welcome back to True Crime Guys podcast. I'm your host Michael, and I'm so glad I could drag Andy here today with me to talk about this
kicking and screaming,
awful case. Andy, thank you for showing up today, even though we're talking about Dean Corll.
Listen, as soon as you unlock the chains, I will.
Corll.
Yeah, that's going to be heavily used. I got a little bit too much today. I will apologize now, but I'm still going to do it.
Well, listen, in this case today, Andy, we will take the levity in any way, shape, or form.
Yes.
Okay? Because this is a hard hitter. And guys, please forgive our jokes in beforehand, because, like I said, these type of cases, we have to add levity where we can. This is a hard topic to discuss. There's a reason that we have avoided old Dean Arnold Corll for a long time.
It was kind of always like do we have to?
Yeah.
Somebody else suggested one other thing first. Let's do one other thing first.
Right? Just one more
Just under the wire, right there. Slid
Hold
in.
on. Well, we got a series going that we haven't picked up on in 10 weeks. But yeah, even Lorne shied away from this guy and Lorne, he did like the gruesome cases. He doesn't really like the child abuse cases. I mean, who does, right?
Yeah.
Those are tough for anyone to talk about. This case kind of teeters on that, right? You have most of the victims actually are teenagers. So in the case that we'll talk about today. But guys, real quick, last week, Andy and I were here on the free platform and we talked headlines and shenanigans. We talked the murder of Jam Master Jay, right?
I mean, the previous old time, the 20 plus year murder of
we talked
Jam Master
about
Jay and
the resolve.
The men who were finally convicted of the murder of Jam Master Jay.
And apparently we were the last ones to find out because everybody already knew who killed him for years.
We just don't have that kind of street cred, Michael.
Apparently not.
Nobody tells us shit.
Apparently not.
They know we're going to put it on a podcast.
Exactly. So that was our headline, and our shenanigan was the Willy Wonka chocolate fake out. I like to call it, Andy.
Jesus Christ, I was so
happy.
That was the highlight of my week, just getting to actually just show that to you in like live
guys,
action.
Please, if you haven't listened to last week's headlines and shenanigans, please check that out. At least the Willy Wonka chocolate fake out conversation. Basically what happened was these people in Scotland, right?
Glasgow,
they advertised this Willy Wonka chocolate experience, this totally immersive theme park almost experience.
Let's be clear, they couldn't say Willy Wonka. They had to trademark, what was it, Wonka's chocolate experience or something like that? Or Willy's chocolate experience.
Oh, just Willy.
They couldn't put Wonka in there. They had to just they had to trademark every single
I got you.
thing.
This Willy's not a Wonka. But anyways, it was just not what you thought, okay? And when they showed up, let's just say the guests were severely disappointed.
Yeah.
Especially at $44 American a ticket. I can't remember exactly what that translates to. It's
like 35 euros or something.
Okay. So yeah, anyways, it's a hilarious story, guys. Please check that out if you haven't. And also last week, if you guys don't know, we do a double header once a month. And on Patreon, we covered the life and death of superstar Kurt Cobain.
Here we are now.
That's right.
Yeah. That
One
was
of
a good
Andy's
episode.
favorite artists. And I know you've been looking, and you've probably known a lot about Kurt's death and looked into it a lot over your lifetime. So this was a fun one for us to talk about. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of talk about Nirvana, a lot of talk about drug use in that episode, to be upfront. So, but anyways, that's the life and death of Kurt Cobain. You guys can find that on Patreon, patreon.com/truecrimeguys. And also, guys, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on social media at True Crime Guys, wherever you are. And if you are a True Crime Guys fan, be sure to let other people know. Check out our merch. We got merch on Threadless and Redbubble and all sorts of things. You guys can check that out at truecrimeguys.com and click the shop button at the top of the screen. Okay? All right. So, Andy, I think I've wasted enough time, Andy.
You put this off as long as we can.
I really have. I procrastinated as long as I possibly can.
Can we not just drag out the intro a little bit longer, Michael?
I don't think so, Andy. We really need to get going in here.
All right, roll it.
Well, first, let's give a little intro. If you guys don't know the awful person that we're discussing today, his name is Dean Arnold Corll. He was an American serial killer, also went by the moniker the Candyman. He and two accomplices named David Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley abducted and tortured and killed at least 28 boys, spanning from 1970 to 1973 in Houston, Texas. The crimes, which became known as the Houston mass murders, were considered the worst example of serial murder in American history at that time, and I think still stand close to the top, Andy.
They still stand definitely some of the ickiest.
Ickiest. Yeah, there we go. We'll stick with that. All right, guys, let's roll that intro. We'll see you on the other side.
Aww.
The words of the police chief offered little consolation to the families of the victims in the mass murders. The chief did say his department and other law enforcement agencies are continuing their investigation. There will be more digging for graves, and there will be more grief as additional victims are identified.
The boys are buried.
Why were they buried here?
Dean Corll decided he wanted to have sex with them. Didn't want to let him go, so he killed him, brought him out here and buried him.
Why here, Wayne?
Carrying this around with you for a long time. I mean, didn't you almost crack several times?
How come this time?
This time, I just haven't felt like I was going to be able to hold my sanity much longer.
What provoked you that night for you to decide to tell it all?
I just think I owe these people this much to let them know what's happened to their boys.
He's just a little 17-year-old boy that was close to his family, that's all I know.
You believe your son did any of this?
No, sir. Wayne's not that kind of person. Wayne loved too deep and too much.
So Dean Arnold Corll was born on December 24th, 1939 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, the firstborn of Mary Robinson and Arnold Edwin Corll.
What is it about certain serial killers and adding the middle name in there? It's like I feel like sometimes it just makes you more sinister when you add the middle name in there.
It does.
It's like it makes you stand out even more. They're like they're making no mistake that who this person is.
Who started that? John Wayne?
I feel like it was probably John Wayne Gacy,
It
maybe,
had to be
or
old
something
John
like
Wayne.
that.
Yeah.
Or maybe H.H. Holmes, technically, but like, but something like that. But yeah, it's just like Ted Bundy still just gets Ted Bundy. They're just like, listen, we fucking know who Ted is.
Yeah, we know who Ted is. Exactly. Now, Dean's father was strict, and his mother was extremely protective. Man, we never heard this before revolving serial killers, have we, Andy?
I'll go ahead and get the bingo card out.
Let me see. Yeah, go ahead and cover up those two squares. Corll's parents' marriage was marred by frequent fights, and the couple divorced 4 years after the birth of their younger son, Stanley, in 1942. Now, Mary Corll, his mother, then sold the family home and moved to a trailer home in Memphis, Tennessee. Arnold Corll had been drafted into the Air Force, but the couple seemed like they did their best, at least the best they could for their children. Dean was a shy, serious child who didn't talk with other children, and seemed concerned for the well-being of others, at least as a child.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how the tables will turn.
Yeah, we're not seeing the signs quite yet. At the age of 7, he suffered an undiagnosed case of rheumatic fever, which was only discovered in 1950 when doctors found Dean had a heart condition, and he was even ordered to avoid PE at school. Now, in 1950 also, Corll's parents remarried and moved to Pasadena, but the reconciliation was very short-lived, and in 1953 the couple once again divorced, with the mother again retaining custody of her sons. The divorce was amicable, and both boys maintained contact with their father.
That's almost unusual for 1950s to have actually like at least somewhat decent co-parenting.
I was just about to say, they were co-parenting back then. It wasn't even a thing. Like nobody was even saying that probably, but they made it work for their kids.
Like they weren't having a happy marriage. They got divorced. You know, the dad got drafted. He still was in the kid's life as much as possible.
Yeah.
They tried to get remarried to see if they could make it work. It didn't work out. They got divorced, but yet still like 1950s to be like, yep, you're going to go to dad's house on the weekend. You're going to go to mom's house during the week. It was like, that's strange for 1950s. That's pretty progressive, honestly.
Yeah, it kind of was. Now, following the second divorce of Corll's parents, his mother married a traveling salesman named Jake West, and the family moved to the small town of Vidor, Texas. Now, in Vidor, Corll's mother and stepfather started a small candy company, operating from the garage of their home, and almost immediately, Dean was working day and night while still attending school. Now, just like his childhood, Corll remained somewhat of a loner in his teenage years. During his years at Vidor High School, his only major interest was brass band, in which he played trombone. Following his graduation from Vidor High School in 1958, the family moved to the Heights district of Houston and opened a new shop, which they named Pecan Prince, which would you prefer?
This is gonna be a hot debate right here. I mean, we're pretty Southern. I would say pecan. That's just that's my pronunciation.
Pecan Prince.
I like that pecan pie.
Yeah,
that pecan
that
Prince.
Pecan. I don't know. I've heard it both ways so many times. But then in 1960, Dean moved to Indiana to live with his grandparents. He stayed in Indiana for almost 2 years, even forming a close relationship with a local girl there, but returned to Houston in 1962 to help with his family's candy business. He later moved into an apartment right above the shop. Now, around this time, Dean's mom divorced Jake West in 1963 and appointed Dean as vice president of the candy company. Apparently, she gave her ex-husband, Mr. West, no share of the candy company.
No.
Like, there was a prenup, I think. She was very progressive, as we've already stated.
Listen, you are a traveling salesman. I've seen your potential already. Okay?
Right, exactly. Now, the same year, one of the teenage male employees of this said candy company complained to Dean's mom that Dean had made sexual advances toward him. In response, his mom simply fired the boy. So, there you go, Andy. Dean doesn't do anything wrong.
Fucking nepotism right there.
Right, seriously.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Even so progressive. I was giving you the benefit of the doubt here.
Like, what we'll find out later is a lot was ignored during his time in the candy store. He was pretty much, the candy prince, right? Candy prince can't do anything wrong.
Yeah, this is Wonka's Wonderland for him, literally.
Right. And you got to think his mother is really clinging to him at this time in her life. She's been through 2 marriages now, 2 divorces, and, he's the man around. So she's sticking with her son. You know what I mean? She's like, she's probably thinking, well, we don't need a man at this point. I got Dean, and we can run this business ourselves.
Yeah, she's already been very protective of him so far.
Exactly. So as Dean was closing in on 20 years old, he was drafted into the United States Army, August 10th, 1964, and assigned to Fort Polk, Louisiana, for basic training. And then he was later assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia, before his permanent assignment at Fort Hood, Texas, as a radio repairman.
All right, get another one of those military services. I'm going filling up these bingo boxes,
and
Michael.
Much like most of the serial killers, Dean hated the fucking military because people tell you what to do there, Andy. Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew, right?
It's a 50-50 sometimes. It's like sometimes they hate it and then sometimes they thrive in the routine. They thrive in the I can be the best at this. I can stand out in this. Like I can hone this skill. I can learn. Like sometimes they use it as like a training ground and then sometimes the serial killers hate the authority.
They don't want to be told what to do. They don't last long. They get in there, they learn their skills, and then they're ready to dip.
Yeah, they can't make it a long-term thing.
No.
Yeah, like I said, it's training for them. That's not their career.
Exactly. And Dean was looking for any way out of the military, and he found one. He applied for a hardship discharge on the grounds that he was needed within his family's business. The Army granted his request, and he was given an honorable military discharge on June 11th, 1965, after just 10 months of service.
It's a guaranteed trade of Buckeyes every month.
That's right.
He was sending in taffy every month to his former colonel.
That's right.
It's like this under the table. You sign this. Here's a little sweeten the deal here.
That's right. Literally sweeten the deal.
Is this cash? No, it's candy. I said sweeten. What are you not getting?
Is this Laffy Taffy?
You're good. You're good.
You're good.
You keep it coming.
Exactly. And that's exactly what old Dean did. He returned to Houston as vice president of the family candy business. And in 1965, the Corll Candy Company moved across the street from a Heights elementary school. How convenient, right? What a great place to be as a candy company.
The Corll Candy Company almost sounds like a tongue twister. It's like he was just trying to mess with customers.
It is, and it just sounds creepy in hindsight, huh?
It does. It feels like it would look weird on a logo somewhere.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Now, Dean was known to give free candy to the children. Imagine that, Andy. Ooh. In particular, teenage boys. They got the full-size bars.
King size.
The family company also employed a very small workforce where he would flirt with several of the teenage male employees. He even installed a pool table at the rear of the factory where employees and local youth would gather and hang out. So,
like, I don't want to make too many Willy Wonka jokes. But
you don't want to make too many?
It is just like, man, this guy really is.
Sometimes
like,
they're softballs, right?
It's just like he's trying to get his own little, like, Oompa Loompas around. Like, he's literally, this guy literally, he's almost like John Wayne Gacy. He's hiring his target, like his demographic of target victims.
Absolutely.
Like, he's like, I got the power here. You want $20? Why don't you go churn up some of that taffy for me?
Exactly.
And then he's like, oh, well, I'm going to keep track of you. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very textbook. Yeah. He's trying to build his own little hunting grounds at work almost.
Exactly. And maybe his own little army, right? And he meets one of his first little soldiers there, David Brooks, in 1967. He befriended 12-year-old Brooks, then a 6th grade student, and one of the many children to whom he gave free candy frequently. And Brooks initially became one of Dean's many youthful companions. He also joined Dean on regular trips that he took to South Texas beaches in the company of various youths. And he was given motorcycle rides by Corll and even allowed to ride his bike by himself. Whenever Brooks told Dean that he was in need of cash, he was given money right away.
I mean, this is textbook grooming. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
very much so.
Absolutely. In 1970, when he was 15, Brooks dropped out of high school and moved to Beaumont to live with his mother. When he visited his father in Houston, he also visited Dean, who allowed him to stay at his apartment. Dean eventually talked Brooks into a sexual relationship. That started when Dean paid Brooks to allow him to perform fellatio on the youth, and the same year, he moved back to Houston and began calling Dean's apartment his second home.
Yeah, like I said, textbook grooming right there. Like literally taking him at 12 years old. It's like it's literally following like a checklist at this point. Like it's just this character Dean Corll is almost like who they almost wrote the book on. Like how they would like explain like these are the things to look out for. These are the characteristics.
Yeah, I mean, he's literally the Candyman.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, now by the time Brooks dropped out of high school, Dean's mother and half-sister Joyce had moved to Colorado after the failure of her third marriage and the closure of the family candy company in June of 1968. After that, she would often talk to Dean on the phone, but she never saw him in person again.
I really wonder how that candy company failed.
Right?
Like I feel like what was he just like? I feel like his overhead was way too much. I feel like they were like, okay, Dean, we only see like we're putting out so much candy. Why did you hire 24 teenage boys to to work in this one room shop? And it's a tight ship I run.
And how much candy is he giving away?
Exactly. How much he's like his overhead and his like profit losses were just crazy. Like his mom was like, "Oh God, maybe I should have cut my ex-husband out of this deal."
Yeah, right. So, following the closure of the candy company, Dean took a job as an electrician at the Houston Lighting and Power Company, where he tested electrical relay systems, and he would end up working here for the rest of his life. The end. I'm just kidding. Actually, we're just getting to the good stuff, Andy. I mean, the 70s.
Oh, I mean, that is the good stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, maybe the good stuff is not the right phrase for this timeline we're about to get into.
I think you're getting into the gold stuff, like the gold star territory, right?
Yeah. I like the red star. I like murders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the more I think about it, how does a candy store fail like across from a middle school?
Elementary school.
An elementary school, it's like, technically, that should have been the best real estate ever. That thing should have grown up like a Wonka factory, man. And you somehow, like, you know how you fail it? You're fucking giving away free candy and you're a goddamn child killer. That's how you fail a candy store next to an elementary school.
You run it into the ground. Absolutely. Because, I say we're getting into the 70s now, because 1970 to 1973, Dean Corll killed at least 28 people. Jesus. All of his victims, males, aged 13 to 20 years old. Most of his victims were abducted from Houston Heights, which was then a low-income neighborhood northwest of downtown Houston. Now, most of the time, he was assisted by one or both of his teenage accomplices, Elmer Wayne Henley and David Owen Brooks. Several victims were friends of one or the other, and two other victims, Billy Bulch and Mally Winkle, were former employees of the Corll Candy Company.
Like I said, he was literally hiring his potential victims.
Absolutely. He had this in mind all the time. Corll's victims were typically lured into his van with an offer of a party or a lift and driven to his house. There, they would either be supplied with alcohol or drugs until they passed out, and then tricked into putting on handcuffs, or simply just grabbed by force. Then they were stripped naked and tied to either Corll's bed or a plywood torture board, where they were sexually assaulted, tortured, and sometimes, after several days, killed by strangulation or shot with a .22 caliber pistol. Their bodies were then tied in plastic sheeting and buried in one of 4 places: a rented boat shed, a beach on the Bolivar Peninsula, a woodland near Lake Sam Rayburn, where his family owned a lakeside log cabin, or a beach in Jefferson County.
Yeah, we are really skimming over the details of Dean Corll's crimes, and they are some of the most horrendous accounts.
In some ways we are. We are going to go back and talk about some of these. I just wanted to start because his MO was so repetitive.
Yeah, but that torture
it's kind of like if you talk about one, you've kind of talked about them all in a way. And I don't mean that to sound desensitized. I just feel like this is more efficient to get this MO out of the way up front, and then we'll go back and talk about some of the testimony from David Brooks and Henley, who were actually there about certain crimes.
Yeah, like I said, his stuff is some of the most horrendous accounts from these guys.
Yes. Gosh, and here's another thing that Corll typically did. He would force his victims to phone or write their parents with explanations for their disappearances, in an effort to delay the parents looking for their children, and also kind of ease their fears for their son's safety. And then he would also keep keepsakes, which most serial killers do. Usually he chose keys. He would keep their keys for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe so later he could have access to their cars or houses, or if he needed it. I really don't know. I don't really know what that's about, but
possibly, or maybe it's one of those things. It's like you can find a key somewhere and like, I don't know what this key went to. I just have this key.
I see what you're saying.
Like you have like someone's like ID. It's like, you know who this is.
It's like Gacy was keeping their IDs in a drawer in his shed. Yeah, probably not a great idea.
A key is something you can very much like kind of like pass off as like, I just collect keys that I find.
I just like keys.
Yeah, it's just a weird collection I have.
Yeah. And Dean often changed addresses until he moved to Pasadena in the spring of 1973. He always lived in or close to Houston Heights, where most of his crimes happened. So, Dean killed his first known victim. He was an 18-year-old college freshman, Jeffrey Conan, on September 25th, 1970. Conan vanished while hitchhiking from the University of Texas to his parents' home in Houston. He was alone at the corner of Westmeister Road and South Voss Road near uptown Houston. Now, at the time of Conan's disappearance, Corll lived near the intersection at Westheimer Road. He likely offered Conan a ride to his parents' home, and Conan evidently accepted.
Or he probably offered him, hey, why don't you come back and hang out for a little bit? I'll take you to your parents' house. But,
He could have, but he was hitchhiking. So, he's going to tell him whatever he could to get. You don't have to tell a hitchhiker much to get in the car.
Yeah, especially in the 70s. 1970, it's not going to take much, but
exactly.
This guy's MO is normally like, hey, why don't you come back to my house? I'll give you, come party for a little bit. Then I'll take you back.
Exactly. So here's a little information about this specific murder from David Brooks, one of the accomplices. He was the one that actually led police to the body of Jeffrey Conan, and that was on August 10th, 1973. But the body was buried at High Island Beach. Forensic scientists subsequently deduced that the youth had died of asphyxiation caused by manual strangulation and a cloth gag in his mouth. The body was found buried beneath a layer of lime, which was very common, wrapped in plastic, almost always, naked, and bound hand and foot, suggesting that he had also been violated. Now, around the time of Conan's murder, Brooks interrupted Corll in the act of assaulting 2 teenage boys that were strapped to this plywood torture board. Corll promised Brooks a car in return for his silence. Brooks accepted, and Corll bought him a green Chevy Corvette.
God, he had to have like sold that candy company or something, because like I said, this guy, he did have it seemed like he had a good bit of money still on hand.
Well, he was an electrician too, and he wasn't an idiot. I mean, he was pretty intelligent. He had military experience. He had business management experience, and now he's an electrician. He's probably making decent money.
Yeah, 1970.
Yeah. So Dean later told Brooks that he murdered these two boys that he saw him assaulting, and he offered him $200 for any boy that he would bring back to him. And on December 15th, 1970, David Brooks signed the contract, man. He brought him his first boy, or two actually, at once. He lured two 14-year-old boys named James Glass and Danny Yates away from a religious rally in Houston Heights. Glass was an acquaintance of Brooks who, at Brooks' invitation, had already been to Corll's apartment. And both the boys were tied to opposite sides of Corll's torture board and subsequently raped, strangled, and buried in the boat shed that Corll had rented a month earlier. Quite a few boys met their demise in that boat shed. We'll talk more about that.
Yeah, that's another common thing for Corll too. It's like a lot of his victims. It's like the first time they came to his apartment, it wasn't the last time. It's like he would come there the first time, almost like lure
gain
them.
their trust.
Yeah, like yeah, come on back. And then the next time he's like, then they go a little bit more trusting. Yeah, drink this, try this, and then they're on the board.
Exactly. 6 weeks after the double murder of Glass and Yates, on January 30th, 1971, Brooks and Corll encountered two teenage brothers named Donald and Jerry Waldrop walking to a bowling alley. Both boys were enticed into Corll's van and were driven to an apartment that Corll had moved into at 3200 Mangum Road, where they were raped, tortured, and strangled before Brooks and Corll buried them in the boat shed. Now, between March and May of 1971, Corll killed 3 more boys between the ages of 13 and 16 years old. Just like the Waldrop brothers, they all lived in Houston Heights. 2 of these victims, David Hillegeist and Molly Winkle, were abducted and killed together on May 29th, 1971. Both sets of parents launched a frantic search for their sons. Now, because of the attention that these search parties were drumming up, there were volunteers of all ages, one of which was a boy who offered to distribute posters of the missing boys. He was 15-year-old Elmer Wayne Henley, a lifelong friend of Hillegeist. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because I've said it a few times already in this episode, and Henley ends up becoming the other accomplice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on August 17th, 1971, we're into the summer now, Corll and Brooks encounter a 17-year-old acquaintance of Brooks named Reuben Watson. He's walking home from a movie theater in Houston. Brooks persuaded Watson to attend a party at Corll's house. The youth agreed and was taken to Corll's home, where he was eventually buried in the boat shed.
Yeah.
Now, in the winter of 1971, Brooks introduced Elmer Wayne Henley to Dean Corll. Henley most likely had been lured to Corll as an intended victim like the others, but I guess Corll saw something in Henley and thought that he would make a good accomplice and offered him the same deal as Brooks, $200 for any boy that you lure to this apartment, explaining that he was involved in a sexual slavery ring that operated out of Dallas. More on that later. Henley accepted Corll's offer, obviously, and participated in the abduction of many victims, and then later, many of the killings. According to Henley, the first abduction he participated in occurred at 925 Schuler Street, an address that Corll had moved to in February of 1972.
He really moves around a lot during this time, too.
He has to. I mean, he shits where he eats. All of these victims were taken from the Heights district of Houston. Like, if you're going to stay in that same district, I guess you have to stay on the move.
Yeah, and at least he's living around the area, but he's even moving constantly around the area. Like, he's trying to make sure that no one sees his car going back to the same place too many times.
Right, exactly. Now, in the statement Henley gave to police later on, he and Corll picked up a youth at the corner of 11th and Stewwood and lured him to Corll's home on the premise of smoking some marijuana. Now,
I mean, you'll lure me into a van today with that. I'm sorry. I know it's not a great joke right now, but I mean, you can pull up right now and you will get me in a van pretty easily.
And it did work. Apparently, Henley duped the young youth into putting on a pair of handcuffs after he was high and most likely intoxicated with alcohol as well, before leaving him alone with Dean. The identity of this victim is not known for sure, but it is possible the youth was Willard Branch, a 17-year-old acquaintance of Henley and Brooks who disappeared on February 9th, 1972, and was found buried in the boat shed. Now, 1 month later, on March 24th, 1972, Henley, Brooks, and Corll encountered an 18-year-old acquaintance of Henley's named Frank Anthony Aguirre. He was leaving a restaurant on Yale Street where the youth worked. Henley called Aguirre over to Corll's van and invited him to his apartment on the promise that he could drink beer and smoke weed with them. Aguirre agreed and followed them to Corll's home. Inside Corll's house, Aguirre was given marijuana and then tricked into donning a pair of handcuffs just like the other victims. And then Corll pounced. And as always, Brooks and Henley bounced. Now, despite the revelations that Corll was killing the boys he and Brooks brought him, Henley nonetheless became an overly active participant in the abductions and murders, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
According to Brooks, Henley was especially sadistic. Henley assisted Corll and Brooks in the abduction and murder of two youths named Billy Balch and Johnny DeLone. In Brooks's confession, he stated that both of the boys were tied to Corll's bed, and after their torture and rape, Henley manually strangled Balch, then shouted, "Hey, Johnny," and shot Johnny DeLone in the forehead. But the bullet exited through his ear, and he was still alive. And Johnny was pleading with Henley, "Wayne, please, don't," before Henley strangled him as well.
If the allegations that Brooks does put against Henley are true, it's very easily to see what Corll saw in him. Like as a child, it's very. If these allegations are true, that there's no question that as soon as Dean met this kid, he was like, "Ooh,
yeah,
you are going to be my Anakin Skywalker. You are going to be my little apprentice."
Yeah, absolutely. He wanted somebody that would go, I guess, a little further than Brooks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, someone he could mold in his image, and someone he could feed off of.
Exactly.
Someone who could like egg him on, and he could edge him on, and they could just go back and forth and just keep taking it further and further.
Yeah, exactly. Brooks later claimed that even he was a victim of Corll and Henley, stating that Henley knocked him unconscious one time when he entered the house. Corll then tied Brooks to his bed and assaulted him repeatedly before finally releasing him. Now, despite the assault, Brooks continued helping Corll find victims, most likely out of fear. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah,
these guys just knocked you unconscious and tortured you for who knows how long. Yeah, you're probably going to do what they say. You're like 15 years old.
And they probably told you can't go to the police. You're a part of all this.
You're a part of this. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. You feel powerless. But Dean lived on, and he eventually moved to an apartment at Westcott Towers, where he is known to have killed another 4 victims. Stephen Sickman was killed on July 20th, then 2 others on October 3rd, and a 19-year-old named Richard Kepner was murdered on November 12th. Altogether, at least 9 teenagers between the ages of 13 and 19 were murdered between February and November of 1972, 5 of whom were buried at High Island Beach, and the remaining 4 inside Corll's boat shed.
Those are crazy numbers, even in like the serial killer world.
I know it's
in that time frame.
Gloss over them, and then the ones that aren't mentioned, when I said 2 others on October 3rd, we don't know. They have not been identified. He still has some victims that haven't been identified. So
yeah, he's moving around so much. He is picking up hitchhikers. He's picking up just strays, basically.
Exactly. Now, on January 20th, 1973, Corll moved to an address on Wirt Road in Houston. Within 2 weeks, he killed a 17-year-old named Joseph Lyles before moving again to 2020 Lamar Drive in Pasadena on March 7th. No known victims were killed from February to June 3rd of 1973. Okay?
I wonder if he was a bit paranoid too.
He may have. Maybe the heat was raising up. Maybe the heat.
I mean, if you kill this many children in this short amount of time, there's going to be heat. Right. There's posters going up.
Somebody was onto him, right?
There's police looking. There's parents looking. There's community meetings. There's like you've got to be. Yeah, I feel like he's probably paranoid at this point. Like it's a short amount of time, but he's done a lot in that short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, from June on, Corll's rate of killings increased dramatically. He's back at it, Andy. Henley later compared the frequency of killings to being like a bloodlust, adding that Corll would make reflex movements and say he, quote, needed to do a new boy.
This is the textbook berserker phase of a serial killer. He literally almost took a bit of a cooling off phase to like, is there any heat? Am I going to get caught?
Right.
No? Let's even go harder.
Exactly. And between June 4th and July 7th, 1973, a further 3 victims were murdered and buried at Lake Sam Rayburn. And on July 12th, a 17-year-old named John Sellers was murdered and buried at High Island Beach. Now, also in July of 1973, David Brooks married his pregnant fiancée, and Henley temporarily became Dean's sole provider of victims. On August 3rd, 1973, Corll killed his last victim, a 13-year-old boy from South Houston named James Dramala. Now, Dramala was abducted while riding his bike in Pasadena, and he was driven to Corll's home, where he was tied to Corll's torture board, he was raped, and he was strangled with a cord before being buried in the boat shed. David Brooks later described Dramala as a small, blonde boy whom he had shared a pizza with just before his murder.
It is crazy to think that he also like moved his torture setup from house to house. He would have to like rebuild this thing almost every time.
Right.
So this isn't like a kit he has put together. He has to like break this thing down, throw it all away, get rid of all the evidence, go to a new house, rebuild this whole thing again, and then do the whole thing. He has to leave this house. He has to get rid of all the evidence that's been there.
Exactly.
So this is like he is clearly in such a, like he said, like a bloodlust. He's moving at like an unnatural rate. He's working, he's doing this, he's hunting, he's killing, he's hiding. This man is almost asking to be caught.
Absolutely. And also at this point, he's also having ragers at this new residence he's at. Like, he's having parties, he's having lots of people in and out of the home, some leave in plastic, some don't. So it's very confusing things going on. And the evening of August 7th, 1973, he is having one of those get-togethers. Henley, age 17, invited 19-year-old Timothy Cordell Curley to a party at Corll's house. Now, Curley, who was intended to be Corll's next victim, accepted the offer. David Brooks was not present at this party at this time, okay? Henley and Curley, now, they sniffed paint fumes and they drank alcohol until midnight before leaving the house to purchase some sandwiches. They then drove back to the Houston Heights, and Curley parked his vehicle close to Henley's home. Henley exited the vehicle. He walked towards the home of 15-year-old Rhonda Williams, who had been beaten by her drunken father that evening and had decided to temporarily leave home until her father became sober and cooled off. Henley invited Rhonda to spend the evening at Corll's home. Rhonda agreed and climbed into the back seat of Curley's Volkswagen. The now trio headed over to Corll's. At approximately 3 a.m. on the morning of August 8, 1973, Henley and Curley arrived back at Corll's home, accompanied by Rhonda Williams. Corll was furious that Henley had brought a girl along, telling him in private that he had ruined everything.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He is he's raging at this point. He is in berserker mode. Yeah. I feel like he's almost asking to be caught.
He's like, why are you not bringing me someone I can kill?
Why are you not bringing me what I want when I want it? I am on a schedule now. I am like, I can't wait anymore. Like, give me what I want when I want it. I'm going to get it out of my system and I'm going to do it again tomorrow. Like, he's berserking. He is literally, he almost like the point either he's wanting to be caught or he legitimately thinks he's not going to be caught.
Exactly.
He thinks he is never going to be caught at this point.
Exactly. And Henley is doing whatever he can to calm him down. And he tries to explain that Williams, had this argument with her father and she didn't want to return home. She felt unsafe. And Corll did calm down a little bit. And he offered the 3 teenagers some beer and some weed. And they began drinking. And Corll just kind of watched them. He sat like away from them, drinking beer, just watching them intently. And after about 2 hours of drinking and smoking and whatnot, Henley, Curley, and Williams each passed out.
She was telling me she didn't really feel safe, so I just figured I'd bring her to the most dangerous place I've ever even heard of.
Seriously, dude. And then pass out,
yeah,
too.
I feel like it's probably a much better place, right?
Jesus. Well,
you really are a psychopath, aren't you?
Henley awoke to something out of a fucking Saw movie while Corll was snapping handcuffs onto his wrist. His ankles had also been bound together. Curley and Williams lay right beside Henley. They were also securely bound with nylon rope and gagged with adhesive tape, and they were lying face down on the floor. Curley had also been stripped naked. Corll told Henley that he was furious that he brought a girl to his home, and he told him he was going to kill all 3 teenagers after he had assaulted and tortured Curley. He repeatedly kicked Williams in the chest, and then he dragged Henley into the kitchen and placed a .22 caliber pistol against his stomach, threatening to shoot him. Henley played to Corll, though. He promised to participate in the torture and murder of Williams and Curley if Corll would just release him. So Corll agreed. He untied Henley and then carried Curley and Williams into his bedroom and tied them to opposite sides of his torture board. Curley on his stomach, Williams on her back. Corll then handed Henley a hunting knife and ordered him to cut away Williams's clothes, inferring that, while he would rape and kill Curley, Henley would do likewise to Rhonda Williams.
Yeah, he was basically punishing him. He was like, this is what you're going to get. You brought her here. I'm going to make you do this.
Yeah. I think it was like, also, he's like, okay, if you're going to be a part of this, then you're going to be 100% part of this, or I don't trust you.
Yeah, and you thought you were saving this girl? No, I'm going to make sure you never do something I don't tell you to do again.
Yep. So Henley began cutting away Williams's clothes as Corll undressed and began to assault and started torturing Curley. Both Curley and Williams had awakened by this point. Curley began writhing and shouting as Williams, whose gag Henley had removed, lifted her head and asked Henley, "Is this for real?" To which Henley answered, "Yes." Williams then asked Henley, "Are you going to do anything about it?" Henley then asked Corll whether he might take Rhonda into another room. Corll ignored him, and Henley then grabbed his pistol, shouting, "You've gone far enough, Dean." Corll approached Henley, saying, "Kill me, Wayne." Henley stepped back a few paces as Corll continued to advance upon him. "You won't do it." Henley fired at Corll, hitting him in the forehead. Corll continued to lurch towards him, and Henley fired a further 2 rounds at him, hitting him in the left shoulder, and Corll spun around and staggered out of the room, hitting the wall in the hallway. Henley fired 3 additional bullets into Dean Corll's lower back and his shoulder as he slid down the wall in the hallway and outside the room. Corll died where he fell, his naked body lying facing the wall. After shooting Corll, Henley released Curley and Williams from the torture bed, and all 3 teenagers dressed and discussed what actions they should take. Henley suggested to Curley and Williams that they should simply leave, to which Curley replied, "No, we should call the police." Henley agreed and looked up the number for the Pasadena police in Corll's telephone directory. His call was answered by an operator named Velma Lyons. In his call, Henley blurted to the operator, "Y'all better come here right now. I just killed a man." Henley gave the address to the operator as 2020 Lamar Drive, Pasadena. And as Curley, Williams, and Henley awaited upon Corll's porch for the police to arrive, Henley mentioned to Curley that he had done that, killed someone by shooting them 4 or 5 times.
This part right here, this is very cinematic. This is a very like you said, this is out of a Saw movie. This
really is.
This is a scene where he's like they're all in shock. They're sitting on the porch waiting for the police. This is like the end of a horror movie.
Yeah.
This is you've gotten through to the acolyte or the apprentice, and you've gotten to turn, and you're just sitting there waiting in the aftermath. Like this is so like legitimately horrific. Honestly.
It really is. It is a nightmare. Minutes later, a Pasadena police car arrived at 2020 Lamar. The 3 teenagers were sitting on the porch outside the house, and the officer noted the .22 caliber pistol on the driveway near the trio. Henley told the officer that he was the one who made the call and that Corll was lying dead inside the house. After confiscating the pistol and placing Henley, Williams, and Curley inside the patrol car, the officer entered the bungalow and discovered Corll's dead body in the hallway. The officer returned to the car and read Henley his Miranda rights. In response, Henley shouted, "I don't care who knows about it. I have to get it off my chest." Curley later informed detectives that before the police officer had arrived, Henley told him, quote, "I could have gotten $200 for you."
God.
In custody, Henley explained that for almost 3 years, he and David Brooks had helped get teenage boys, some of whom were his friends, for Dean Corll, who then raped and murdered them. And Henley gave a statement admitting that he assisted Corll in several abductions and murders of teenage boys, informing police that Corll had buried most of his victims in a boat shed in southwest Houston, and others at Lake Sam Rayburn and High Island Beach. Police were initially skeptical of Henley's claims, assuming the sole homicide of the case was that of Corll, which they ascribed to being the result of drug-fueled fisticuffs that had turned deadly.
Again, this is also the 1970s, so any indication of homosexuality or any kind of gay goings-on,
they don't like to touch it.
The cops treat that as yucky. That's
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Is this just a lover's quarrel gone wrong? Like it's
right.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Jeffrey Dahmer. It's like I don't want to touch this.
Yeah, exactly. Henley was quite insistent though, and he was recalling the names of 3 boys: Cobble, Hillegeist, and Jones, whom he and David Brooks had procured for Corll. The police accepted that there might be something to his claims, as all 3 teenagers were listed as missing at the Houston Police Headquarters.
Yeah, I feel like at this point there would be a goddamn bulletin board out there that looked like a fucking calendar.
Yeah.
With just a different child every month going down that board. It's like, yeah, that one, that one, that one, that one. Just like how would you not know at this point? It's like, yeah, I can point to all the ones out there. I can tell you where they are.
Yeah, exactly. Also, the floor of the room where the 3 teenagers had been tied up was covered in thick plastic sheeting. Police also found the plywood torture board measuring 7 by 3 feet with handcuffs in each corner. They also found at Corll's address a large hunting knife, rolls of clear plastic just like on the floor, a portable radio rigged to a pair of dry cells to give increased volume, a number of dildos, thin glass tubes, and links of rope.
Yeah, he literally had the room set up like ready to go, like almost like Dexter.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like floor's got tarps on them. All right, let's go.
Yep. The Ford Econoline van that belonged to Corll, parked in the driveway, conveyed a similar theme, as you could imagine. The rear windows of the van were sealed by blue curtains. In the rear of the vehicle, police found rope, a swatch of beige rug covered in soil stains, and a wooden crate with air holes drilled in the sides. The pegboard walls inside the rear of the van were rigged with several rings and hooks. Another wooden crate with air holes drilled in the sides was also found in Corll's backyard. Now, inside this crate, they found several strands of human hair.
Yeah, that's one of the even like the darker even things about the whole like weird things. Like, do we even know what happened? I don't think we want to know what's in the box.
We don't want to know. But at this point, the police are really listening to Henley. They're like, okay, this kid may not be full of shit. Everything he's leading us to is saying that this is a serial killer, pretty much.
This kid's doing our job for us.
Right. So let's see if he knows where any of the bodies are, right? And of course, Henley did. He agreed to accompany police to Corll's boat shed in Houston, where he claimed the bodies of most of the victims would be found. Inside Corll's boat shed, police found a half-strip car, which turned out to be stolen from a used car lot in March, a child's bike, empty bags of lime, and a box full of teenage boys' clothing.
Police guessing not with the tag still on.
Not with the tag.
Not new. Yeah, a lot of weird.
A lot of used. Some of them look cut off. Odd.
Weird. Yeah.
Police began digging through the soft shell, crushed earth of the boat shed and soon uncovered the body of a young blonde-haired teenage boy, lying face up, and he was encased in clear plastic, buried beneath a layer of lime. Police continued excavating through the earth of the shed, unearthing the remains of more victims in varying stages of decomposition. Most of the bodies found were wrapped in thick, clear plastic sheeting. Some victims had been shot, some strangled, the ligature still wrapped around their necks. All of the victims found had been sodomized, and most victims found bore evidence of sexual torture. On August 8, 1973, a total of 8 corpses were uncovered at that boat shed.
He was even going to extra lengths to make sure they were not found for a long period of time.
Yes.
Wrapping them in plastic, covering them in lime to make sure no smells got out. And
exactly.
He was going extra steps to continue what he was doing.
He was. Now, police found 9 additional bodies in the boat shed on August 9th, 1973. David Brooks gave a full confession that evening, admitting to being present at several killings and assisting in several burials. although he continued to deny any direct participation in the murders. He agreed to accompany police to High Island Beach to assist in the search for the bodies of the victims. And on August 9th, 1973, police accompanied Henley to Lake Sam Rayburn in San Augustine County, where Henley told police that Corll had buried 4 victims that he killed that year, and 2 additional bodies were found in shallow graves.
I feel like some of the times they went places, he was like, yeah, I know that 4 bodies are here. And they went there like, there's 7. He's like, I knew a 4. Like,
actually, at first, what they found was they found 2.
Oh, okay.
And then he kept talking to him or whatever. And then the next day, they were like, okay, let's go back out to the lake. So they would go back to Lake Sam Rayburn, and they found the 2 other bodies that Henley was talking about. And both victims showed signs of torture and severely beaten, wrapped in plastic, all of the same things. That afternoon, both Henley and Brooks accompanied police to High Island Beach, leading police to the shallow graves of another 2 victims. And on August 13th, 1973, Henley and Brooks went with the police to High Island Beach again, where 4 more bodies were found, making it a total of 27 known victims, the worst killing spree in American history at the time.
God, yeah, that was crazy for them going out there and just every day finding almost more bodies, being like, all right, can you point to another spot? Yeah, I think there's probably over there. Should probably dig over there.
Yep.
And then that day, dig up one. Next day, it's like, any more? Yeah, you should probably go dig over there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like almost every day. It's a crazy thing to even think about.
It really is.
These guys were like kids, too. These were teenagers.
They're just teenagers, man.
That's so crazy to think about, too.
It really is. The families of Corll's victims were highly critical of the Houston Police Department, which had been quick to label the missing boys as runaways who had not been worthy of a major investigation. The families of the murdered said that the police should have noted a trend in the pattern of disappearances of teenage boys from the Heights neighborhood. Other family members complained that the police had been dismissive to their pleas that their sons had no reason to even run away from home in the first place.
Why was that such a common, like, just get out of jail free card for all the police in the 70s and 80s? They're just like, yeah, probably ran away. I don't really feel looking for a kid. Like, it was such an inconvenience for, like, the police back in the 70s to look for a kid.
I think it was just the age, too. They're like, these are 17, 18, 19-year-old boys. Like, they can handle themselves, right? They probably ran away.
I mean, yes, there was
that age.
People did grow up a little bit faster. They grew up a little bit more rough, I guess, at the same time. But it's also like, these are teenagers. There's a lot of times these are like 13, 14-year-olds. These are like barely teenage boys sometimes. And even then the police are like, yep, probably ran away. You know how kids do. It's like, do you think every kid just runs away? It's like a fucking like rite of passage to run away at some point?
Yeah.
It's like, why do you think that happens?
I know. One of the fathers, this was the father of the 2 brothers who were killed at the same time. I think their last name was Waltrin or something. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there were 2 brothers that were killed at the same time. And he stated that the police chief told him, quote, "You know your boys are runaways," end quote.
Oh, God, just the gaslighting right there.
Yeah. And to which the father responded, "You don't run away from home with nothing but a bathing suit and 80 cents. Apparently his boys were at the pool when they disappeared.
Yeah, you don't just, these boys, it's very clearly some of these boys were not runaways.
No.
It's like these boys were on their way home, or they were supposed to be going somewhere else, or they were like taken from a place. Like the one boy who was literally leaving like a religious gathering. It's like,
right.
Oh, you really think the teenager who was at a religious gathering was a runaway? Like,
right.
Really? Like, it's not fitting your MO, guys. You're just literally just being like, yep, another runaway.
Doesn't make any sense. And by April of 1974, 21 of Corll's victims had been identified, with all but 4 of them having either lived in or had close connections to Houston Heights. 2 more teenagers were identified in 1983 and 1985, one of whom, Richard Kepner, also lived in Houston Heights. The other, Willard Branch, lived in the Oak Forest district of Houston. Now, Dean Corll and his accomplices are known to have killed a minimum of 28 teenagers between September 1970 and August of 1973, although it's suspected that the true number of victims may be 29 or more, easily, in my opinion. To date, a total of 26 of his victims have been identified, and the identity of a 27th victim, whose body has never been found, is conclusively known.
Yeah, this is like, it's almost crazy to think it's like these are the 20, like the 28, 26, 29, those numbers that like Brooks and Henley are able to like disclose. They're the ones they know about. This man was like unhinged. He was berserking. How many times? Like,
and
do you
again,
not think
we
that
don't know what he did during the years at the candy factory. Just because most of the details we know are because of the accomplices.
Yeah, exactly.
He could have been doing this before without accomplices, and no one would know.
Or just the fact that he is an adult. How many times he was moving and driving around and traveling in this big van? How many times he could have just gone out by himself one night or one afternoon, picked up some boy, put him in that box that he had in his van, and gone out somewhere else and done something. It's like these are just the ones that these boys were able to like identify and point police to.
Exactly.
So it's crazy to think. I definitely, my personal opinion, I think it's higher. I think he probably had a few solo trips he went out on.
Most likely. So during his active years, 1970 and 1973, 42 boys disappeared in the Houston area. The police were heavily criticized for all but stopping the search for victims once the mass killer Juan Corona's record for having the most victims had been surpassed. Okay, so after they found the 26th and 27th bodies at the High Island Beach, the search was basically called off, even though at this final discovery there was the presence of 2 extra bones. With these 2 bodies, there was extra bones. There was an arm bone and a pelvis, indicating that at least one additional person had been killed.
Oh, God, exactly. Yeah, it's like the cops were almost so lazy to be like, there's no way he killed that many, right?
Some people have 2 pelvises, Andy.
Those special ones with 2 pelvises.
Exactly. Yet the search for more bodies at the beach was abandoned, Andy, on August 13th, 1973. Despite Henley's insistence that there were 2 more bodies buried there.
God, how lazy are you? This guy's telling you.
He's trying to tell him.
There's at least 2 more out there. It's like, yeah, man, but like, look at the calluses I got on these hands now. That's a lot of digging.
We got enough.
That's a lot of digging.
We got enough. The 2 bodies that Henley was talking about may have been those of Mark Scott and Joseph Lyles. In light of more recent developments, the victim Joseph Lyles was found by chance in 1983. I have no doubt that if the search had continued, I think both victims would have been discovered out there.
Yeah, most likely.
Fellow workers at the Corll Candy Company. This is what we were talking about. Let's look a little more into his time with the candy company. But lots of fellow workers recall Dean doing a lot of digging in the years leading up to 1968. And that was right around the time his mother's 3rd marriage was deteriorating and the candy business was failing.
Yeah, where's all your profits going, Dean?
Yeah, seriously. Now, Corll would say he was burying spoiled candy to avoid contamination by insects.
Because that's what I just bury all this bad candy in the backyard.
Right, it keeps the insects happy.
That's what all the big chocolatiers do.
House.
That's what all the big chocolatiers do.
Exactly.
Go to Hershey's. It's a fucking wasteland back there.
He also cemented over the floor, Andy. Kind of odd. And he was also observed digging in waste ground that was later covered by concrete and turned into a car park.
Maybe he just liked digging, man. Just liked digging holes.
Yeah, I just don't buy it, Andy.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
Former employees remember Dean also having lots of rolls of plastic, clear plastic, by the way, the exact same type he used to bury his victims. And they think that Dean may have begun killing much earlier than 1970.
Yeah, the fact that his victims were already, his MO was almost so solidified at the first known victim.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, very rarely does a serial killer like nail their MO on the first killing.
Right, right.
It usually kind of evolves a little bit, and then you're like, oh, now there's a pattern.
Yeah.
But like he was like we said, like, kidnapping, rape, torture, killing, wrapping in plastic, taking out, burying, covering in lime, like from
Same
every
thing
single
over and
one.
over again.
It's like from the very first one, like to think that like, I feel like this was already practiced.
Yeah.
To know these steps had to be in place by your first one, it seems like you already had practice. Or like you only got fucked up once or twice.
Exactly. All right, so way earlier when I talked about how Dean used to lie to Henley and Brooks and tell him, or I'm saying lie in quotes, and he would tell them that he was part of a sex trafficking ring out of Dallas, right? Well, this little tidbit of information is about the only thing that adds any credence to that, and it is interesting. During a routine investigation in March of 1975, the Houston police discovered a cache of pornographic pictures and films depicting young boys. Now, of the 16 individuals who appeared in the films and photos, 11 of them were victims of Dean Corll.
Okay.
11
or at
out
least
of 16.
11 known ones. Yeah, it's like you could say, okay, who are these other ones?
Okay. Now, the discovery raised a disturbing possibility, obviously, that the statements Corll made to Henley and Brooks, stating that he was with a sex trafficking ring based out of Dallas, may have been somewhat true. Now, the discovery did lead to the arrest of 5 individuals in Santa Clara, California, but no direct link to the Houston mass murders was ever proven. The police stated that they felt that Corll's victims' families had suffered enough, so they really didn't try to connect Dean to this at all.
No,
is what
these
I'm
police
hearing.
seem so lazy. I mean, I hate to say
They
that
just didn't
sometimes,
try.
but like you guys literally like you fucked up from the very beginning, and then every time they're like, "Hey, there might be more evidence here," they're like, "God, more evidence? Jesus,
How much is enough, really?
I mean, come on, he's already dead."
That's true.
Yeah,
That played heavily on this, I think. So let's get into the indictment, into the punishments of these 2 accomplices here, since Corll has already paid the ultimate price. On October 13th, a grand jury convened in Harris County to hear evidence against Henley and Brooks. The first witnesses to testify were Rhonda Williams and Tim Curley, who testified to the events of August 7th, which was the night of the little party, the get-together where Corll died. Another witness who testified to his experience at the hands of Dean Corll was Billy Rittinger. After listening to over 6 hours of testimony from various witnesses, the jury indicted Henley on 3 murder charges and Brooks on 1. Bail was set at $100,000. The district attorney did request that Henley undergo a psychiatric examination to deduce whether he was mentally competent to stand trial. But his attorney, Charles Melder, opposed the decision, stating that the move would violate Henley's constitutional rights.
I mean, you might have gotten out better if you could have pled insanity, but at the same time, I feel like at this point in the trial, after he'd already shown the cops where all the bodies were, it's gonna be hard to prove insanity at that point too. It's like you know what you're doing. You're taking us everywhere. You stood up for these kids. You saved.
Right.
It's gonna be hard to prove insanity right now.
Oh yeah. So by the time the grand jury had completed its investigation, Henley had been indicted for a total of 6 murders, and Brooks for 4. Henley wasn't charged with the death of Dean Corll, which was ruled self-defense. Both Henley and Brooks are serving life sentences.
I mean, yeah, it's crazy to think that's like the one that we definitely know you killed. We're not really going to charge you with that murder because you did. You killed him and you saved these two teens.
Right.
So it's like we know that you're telling us that you were an accomplice to these other ones. So
it's kind of funny. Like when I was putting this timeline together, I felt at a certain point, I'm like, man, I feel like we're talking about Brooks and Henley more than we are Dean, but they are the most important players in this case because they are everything. They are the information. Mm-hmm. If Dean would have somehow killed them at the same time, that maybe he shot Henley, and then as Henley's bleeding out, he shoots and kills Corll, and they both end up dying. Nobody knows about all this shit, Andy.
Yeah, because
it just looks like
away.
a double suicide. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess you have the witnesses that are there, the 2 kids that were tied up,
Yeah.
Rhonda and Curley. But I don't know, man. It's just I feel like Dean got off easy. He really did. Like he just lived this crazy, reckless life where he did whatever the fuck he wanted, and then finally someone shot him, but it seemed like that's what he wanted.
Yeah, he was on the most self-destructive, crazy path, and it's a weird toss-up. It's either he thought he was never going to get caught, or he just wanted to get caught so badly.
Yeah, I guess so.
So yeah, his behavior towards the end just clearly was just berserker.
Absolute berserker. Well, I'm glad we're done with this fucking berserker, man.
I'm so glad. I was like, we just finally knocked this off that suggestion list to be like, you know what? Fine.
Now, every time somebody's like, have you done Dean Corll? I'll be like, yep. I will send your ass a link.
The Candy Man.
The Candy Man.
Nothing sweet about this Candy Man.
Not at all.
Doesn't smell like candy. Nothing about this man is sweet.
No.
Nothing tasty.
First he's sour, and then he's sourer.
First he's sour, then he's disgusting.
But you know what's not disgusting, Andy?
I know what you're going to tell me.
All natural deodorant.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's actually the opposite of disgusting, Andy. Like Oh My Gaia, for instance. Oh My Gaia is an innovative all-natural deodorant, fragrance, and beard oil company specializing in paraben and aluminum-free products. Their innovative line of deodorants inhibit the growth of odor-causing bacteria while still maintaining effectiveness. And at Oh My Gaia, they use only all-natural, paraben, and aluminum-free organic ingredients, guys. And there's tons of scents to choose from. Egyptian musk, coconut, dreamsicle, leather, lumberjack, honeysuckle, fireside, bergamot amber, pear, sweet pea, sailor, barbershop is a good one. And if you don't know where to start, you can always start with True Crime Pine, right? Because you're obviously a true crime fan and you like true crime guys. So there you go.
So you show your loyalty right there.
That's right. And because you're True Crime Guys listeners, you can use the word Creeper for 15% off your order. That's CREEPER for 15% off your order at shop_ohmygaia on Instagram or ohmygaia.com. That's OHMYGAIA.com. Don't forget to use code word Creeper for 15% off your order. Guys, you won't regret it. If you're looking to make the switch to an all-natural deodorant, fragrance, or beard oil company, please give Oh My Gaia a chance. Support those that support us.
Yeah, guys, it's getting warm out there. Gonna start sweating. Gonna start stanking.
Exactly. Speaking of supporting us, please, if you have the time, check out patreon.com/truecrimeguys, where for just $2 a month, you can get access to all of our Patreon exclusive episodes, which we do a new one every single month, and we have over 70 plus episodes waiting for you on Patreon. And then at the $5 tier, there are hundreds more audio files from all of the side shows that we've had throughout the years, from Higher Thoughts to Strange Shorts to Sandu Stories, Headlines and Shenanigans, all of the things, guys. All of the episodes, 5-Minute Murder with Lauren, everything is on Patreon on that $5 tier. And now you can buy annual memberships and save 10%. So it's a win-win. Again, that's patreon.com/truecrimeguys. And guys, please give us a follow on social media. Make sure you subscribe. If you're on YouTube, we have some of our older TCG episodes on there. These podcast episodes, these of TCG proper, are not in video form at the moment, but we are doing our Strange and Unexplained episodes in full video with pictures and all of that good stuff still on our YouTube channel. So please be sure to check that out. Subscribe when you can. Also, check out truecrimeguys.com for everything that I've plugged today. And I think that's about it, Andy. Am I forgetting anything? Make sure you check out the merch, guys. Check out our merch, truecrimeguys.com. Hit that shop button. There's all kinds of cool designs available. All right, that it?
I think that's about it, guys. Continue sending your suggestions in. We'll keep taking them.
All right, Andy, let's do a lighter one next week. What do you think?
Oh, thank God, please. Like I said, Kurt Cobain was good last week. Do something like that.
All right, guys, until next week, I guess you'll just have to keep on creeping.
Bye.